Science, exercise, nutrition, health, energy, passion. 1 year, no beer. This is the 1 year no beer podcast, where you will find all the latest tips, tricks, and hacks for a way to live better.
Welcome to another episode of the 1 year no beer podcast. My name is Rory Fairbairns.
And I am Andy Ramage.
And if you're watching on YouTube, then you'll see that I'm currently being attacked by the sunshine.
Yes, you are. It doesn't happen that often at this time of year, but you are, Rory.
To a Scotsman as well. I'm surprised I haven't burst into...
You're going to have to put some factor on at this rate.
Yeah, turn into flames. At the slightest look of sunshine. So what's been going on in 1 year no beer this week, Andy?
What has been going on? Everything has been going on. The masterminds have really kicked off now. We're into the Jan mastermind, the Feb mastermind has started, so we're running two in parallel for a little while, and we love them.
Tell me a bit more about the masterminds. What do I get?
All right, cool. So it's probably my favourite bit of 1 year no beer. I love it because it's about so much more than just taking a break from alcohol. It's about being the best version of you, finding out what your meaning is, your purpose, setting goals around those purpose, building skills around confidence, building skills around all sorts of different things, from mindfulness to positive psychology to NLP, to just create this vibrant lifestyle. And that, for me, is what this challenge is all about. The alcohol thing becomes secondary to building the best version of you. And the best bit for me and Rue, we get to know all the masterminders really well. You know, it's a daily thing. I'm pretty much in there every single day doing Facebook Lives around the topics and the learning. Rue and I host the coaching calls once a week for an hour. And then also I perform one-to-ones with every single mastermind, which I love. I mean, that, again, is my favourite bit because I get to hear the stories and see the transformations. And it is super powerful. I love it.
Yeah. I think the absolute key when you drill down to it is that what this mastermind is about finding meaning, purpose, and values. Those are what we are now establishing, and what we're about to talk about in this exact podcast interview are the keys to unlocking this addiction mystery, this problem, this reason why society have these various addictive things that they are doing to numb themselves, is because of this lack of meaning and this lack of purpose. And like you said to me on the phone earlier, Andy, you know, it's so exciting to have someone who's at the forefront of addiction come onto our podcast and reiterate everything that we are doing, being at the forefront of changing the world, and leading us on to what our mission is this year, which is to transform, well, not this year, we're not going to do it in 1 year, but is to transform the world's relationship with alcohol. So that's what the masterminds are all about.
Yeah, and just to pick up on that, Addy, who we're going to hear from, is a legend. He's got the most fantastic TED talk as well. We will put this in the show notes. Please watch it. It will shock you after the podcast, slightly less because you'll know the punchline, but still, it is a brilliant TEDx talk that you should all watch, and it's about labels, it's about stigma, and that's what's really motivated Addy to be at the forefront of science, of study around addiction in general. And as Rory mentioned, it's so powerful when you meet someone like this and you have this instant bond, because it's like, this is exactly what we're doing. You know, I think we stumbled upon it rather than, you know, originally we didn't go away and do all the PhDs in the science. We just thought this worked. And actually since then, you know, especially myself and Rory now, we spend a lot of time in and around the science and learning from the best of the best. And what we're realizing is actually this approach is one that's making a big difference, and we're refining it and making it better. So much so that Addy actually wants to try and create a little group of these new thinkers like Annie Grace, ourselves, Club Soda, himself, to actually be at the vanguard of this new movement of showing people that there's more alternatives. It's not us about us being right or someone else being wrong, or Addy's approach being right and ours being wrong. It's about giving people choice, tons of choice, so much more choice than they've ever had before in this whole space. And I'm super excited about what waits for us. I think it's going to get really interesting over the next few years. All right, without further ado, let's hear from the legend himself, Addy Jaffe. Addy, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. I guess I first came across you via your TEDx talk, which has been viewed gazillions of times at this stage, and I loved it.
500,000 now, it's pretty crazy.
500,000, that's insane. I just loved it because I've watched a lot of TEDx talks, and the best ones are the ones that shock you. And your story was one of them. I just got sucked in, drawn in. It's a really good, the way you tell the story. And I was thinking, where is this going? And then, bam! In comes the.
It's not what you expect.
No, not even close to what you expect. Again, and it tees up the whole talk just so well. I almost don't want to spoil it, but would you sort of tell a bit of that story again, or the background?
Sure, I'll tell a different side of it, but I'll tell the background. And the background is, I'm an upper middle class kid with sort of everything you would expect for that. My dad was a physician. My mom was a human resource manager in a bank in Israel before we moved, and lived in nice suburbia in the States when we moved. All that kind of stuff that you always expect from upper middle class childhoods. It's just that mine ended up leaving me in a precarious set of situations that nobody expected in the first place. And like all other kids, I think I started kind of drinking and smoking weed when I was in high school. The long and the short of it is that I ended up in jail and in rehab and a meth addict. And, those things for a lot of people don't go together in their heads.
Yeah.
And so I spent my time when I got out of jail and rehab, I really was wondering what happened. Like, I was not supposed to end up smoking a meth pipe all hours of the day for days on end until I passed out, being a drug dealer. That was not in the cards, and yet I ended up there. So when I got out, a lot of the same things that happened to people that normally get out of jail happened to me. Like, I couldn't get a job to save my life. Nobody would hire me. I was a 9-time convicted felon. And so I did the next best thing that I could do, and that was I went to school and I went all in on studying addiction. So I studied the neuroscience of it. I studied statistics to be able to analyze data better. I studied treatment outcomes and why people don't go to treatment. I studied the best approaches to treatment. I took, just everything that I could look at. And I started noticing a lot of gaps. And so I've sort of made my life's mission in the last, I'd say, 8 to 10 years since finishing school, to try to use the lessons of my past and my story to get as many people out of that hole as possible, to be able to, my goal is to, by the time I die, have helped 1 million people stop their struggles with addiction.
I love it. That is powerful stuff. And obviously coming from that start, to turn things around is huge.
Yeah, I think, I'm working on a book right now. The first version of it, a shorter, like 120 page version of it. I know you just worked on a book, so you know the effort that goes into one of those things. So I'm putting out a shorter version to get started, but it's called The Abstinence Myth, and it comes out of the work that I've done around what keeps people out of getting help. And my goal is to bust down all the barriers and make it as easy as possible for people to go out and get help. Because what I learned in my process is we tell a lot of stories about addicts. I don't know if it's okay for me to swear on this podcast.
Do what you like.
Okay. We tell a lot of stories about addicts, and they're not good stories, right? The stories they're liars, they're cheats, they'll rob you, destroy everything in their path to get their drug of choice, and they're manipulative and in denial, and they can't be trusted. And the work that I've done in the psychology field shows me that the way we look at addicts is a huge part of why people don't get help, and why even when people go get help, they don't get better. So I really want to beat down those walls and those hurdles and completely flip the equation and help people reduce the shame, reduce the stigma. Obviously, that's a big part of what the talk was about. And see the light and be hopeful. People have told me my whole life that I shouldn't tell my story. Well, not my whole life. When I was in graduate school, actually, my parents didn't want me to say it out loud because it would embarrass the family. When I was in graduate school, they told me not to say it because it would make me look not objective and like I had a mission. I do have a mission. My mission is to help people with addiction. But the fact that I have a story, people felt would take away from my ability to be seen as an objective expert. And I completely disagree. B, even if it is true, I'm okay sacrificing that to show people that you can get to the bottom of the barrel and still come out on top. And actually, my second TEDx is about the fact that if you really look at the world, the opposite of what we believe is true. Success is built on repeated, ongoing, essentially never-ending streams of failures.
Yeah, so true.
It's not built on these magical unicorn people who are able to somehow figure everything out for themselves, set out on a course, and then just succeed. That's not how things work. So if I can be that, not that voodoo doll, but, that's sort of like that emblem of imperfect, ongoing struggle, and yet momentous rising, I'm okay doing that, exposing the process all along the way.
And that's fantastic. And that jives really so well with what we do at One You Know Beer. It's that same idea, trying to break down the stigma and the labels around alcohol, because alcohol especially is one of these things that as soon as you go near it, as soon as you stray into the waters of problem and alcohol, boom, everyone's got their labels out. They want to slam it on you. Well-meaning friends, families, doctors, GPs, anyone. They want to stick a great big label on you and off you go to the local centre where you'll be labelled again, and then you carry this with you forever. And exactly, and this is that stigma that we're talking about, because I think what tends to happen, people are so scared of that they do nothing, and then they wait and they wait and they wait until such a point, it's such a big problem, they have no option anymore.
Sure, and if I don't know if you feel the same way about this, but here's a little secret to everybody who's listening right now, so you can pay attention for a moment. It is very possible and potentially likely that there is a subset of people who struggle with alcohol who really fit, and drugs I'd say too, but who really fits that model that people think of as addiction. Their problems are so severe, their risk factors are so great and so stacked, biologically, environmentally, psychologically, spiritually, that they are really going to struggle with this for the rest of their life. I believe that there's probably a subset of people that falls into that, but the vast majority of people don't. They just don't. Alcohol struggles do not equal alcoholism. They don't. But we haven't created a system to try to help the latter, so everybody goes to the former. It's like as soon as you recognize that you have a problem, the notion is, well, if you have to ask for help, you're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And it's just not true. It's just a lie. It's just a lie. That doesn't mean that there are no quote-unquote alcoholics the way we think of alcoholics. There probably are some. But we've completely lost perspective, so that if there's a high... I hear people drink in England. Is that true? People
occasionally
drink a little bit? Occasionally people consume alcohol?
Yeah.
There's this thing, what do you guys go to pubs?
Yeah, occasionally, again.
Every once in a while people have been known to frequent pubs. And so you tell somebody who's been going out to pubs with his buddies his whole life, or a woman who's met her friends after work in pubs her whole life, that because 4 times out of every month, maybe twice a month, she gets too drunk and does things that she wishes she didn't, whatever those might be, that because that happens to her, she has a lifelong chronic disease, and you've just pretty much made sure that woman is going to try to do everything she can to not go get help. Instead of like the stuff that you guys do, or the stuff that I do with Ignited Recovery, or something to just say, hey, you don't like yourself 4 times a month. Let's take a look at what that is. Let's explore it, and let's look into it and see what it is instead of running away from it. One approach is, I believe, creating a problem. The other approach can bring people in and help them figure out maybe they are that type of alcoholic who needs that kind of help.
Yeah, exactly. But it's through that awareness, or that empowered awareness, to make that discovery, rather than through fear, and then it becoming such a problem, or a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what I always worry about. It's that self-fulfilling prophecy that comes with certain labels that, again, are so general, are so pervasive and wide, who really knows what the hell they bloody mean in the first place anyway?
So there's my TEDx talk, Rebranding Your Shame, that is all about something called the Pygmalion effect, or the experimenter bias, or the expectancy effect, stereotype threat, this idea that general opinions and understandings about a group or about individuals can change their behavior in a very implicit way. Just by me believing that you are a certain kind of person, I make you more likely to be that kind of person. That's one. And then I take that even a step farther with a talk that I did in a conference called Revitalize. So if you look up my name, Adi Jaffe, and Revitalize, there's another talk about labels. And I take it completely outside of addiction and talk about how I think a lot of the separation we have as people in general is propagated by the same thing.
Yeah, and actually, you mentioned a study which I'd read about before about the children and the IQ, and that fascinated me. That study, I don't know if you want to give us the background to it, but it just demonstrates, doesn't it, the psychology of not the label that can work in a positive way, but then you can completely flip that and understand how a child that's ADHD and told he's going to struggle at school suddenly flips completely the other way, and it's like a two-pronged attack because it's that self-fulfilling prophecy anyway, and then the other people that hear that label, believe in that label, so they also, the way they behave towards you fits that label. So it's like a double whammy.
Yeah, let me. Is it okay if I kind of walk people through that thing?
Yeah, do it. Yeah, it's great.
I think they would love it. So, this study was a simple study. It's this researcher went up to a school, an elementary school in Northern California. He knew the principal, so they took the entire school and they had access to their beginning of the year school testing. There's a lot of early school testing for intelligence and placement in schools here. So they took that information and they found about 20% of the students that, according to this special test they administer called the Harvard Test of Inflected Acquisition, identified a fifth of the students in the school that were what they called bloomers, kids who were they were just on the cusp of having this intelligence growth. And so they wanted to be careful about it, and they only told the professors, their teachers about this, and they said, look, don't tell the students. We don't want to create that sort of relationship here, and don't tell the parents, but we want you to be ready for this. We want you to identify, because this year is going to be a special year for them. And then they came at the beginning of the next year, and they got access to the school testing again, and they found that they were right. That group, that 20% of students, increased more than the other 80% of students in the school. So their Harvard Test of Inflected Acquisition, was able to correctly identify a group of students that as a whole got smarter than the rest of the students. But it was all a lie. There was no Harvard Test of Inflected Acquisitions. There was nothing. They used a regular test that was already in there and picked at random a fifth of the students and told the teachers this. And so something about the teachers believing that this set of students were smarter changed the interaction between them in really subtle ways that actually created more growth. Maybe they got more help. Maybe they were taught in a slightly different way, or maybe the teachers were friendlier to them. Who knows, right? It's really hard to break apart why. But we've now seen this on both ends. If you treat people as smart, they'll be smarter. If you treat people as dumb, they'll be dumber. Yeah. And it works on a social level. If we think people are smart as a group, they will feel encouraged. If we think they're dumb, they will have anxiety and cognitive pressures against performing well, which means that we have to start taking responsibility for other people, and that scares a lot of us because, look, it's nice to believe that those people are different than me and they are dumb thieves who will steal from me if I don't protect myself. But if I believe that about them and I make it more likely for them to be that way, then maybe I need to shut up and kind of recognize that there are groups of people and there are differences between us and there are similarities, and start doing the much deeper dive sort of work to say, okay, what can I bring to this relationship? How can I have an open mind in this relationship and bring the best out of the other person instead of the other way around?
Yeah, exactly. Rather than having that double influence of growing into a label and then your own personal preconceptions affecting that label. I mean, it's insane. I mean, that's what that study just blew me away. I thought it was fascinating. And then just
so much stuff there.
In terms of the work that you've been doing, which I'm really interested in, by the way, it seems like we're so aligned in much of what we're doing. What are the real gems? What are the big things that have come out from your years of study around, addiction in general, around, labeling, how to approach it, how to help people? You mentioned the disease model, all these things. What's the gems of learning, you'd say?
Sure. So look, I get the disease model really helped us move from the old place, which was all moral responsibility and spiritual bankruptcy and literally all the way to like demonic exorcisms. I mean, we really used to have this belief that people with addiction problems were these damaged souls in these bodies that were meant for complete and utter failure. The disease helped us move it a little bit away from that, which is nice. But I've studied the neuroscience. I was a big proponent of the NIDA disease model for a long time. And the reality is there are a lot of biological components to the issue, but nobody has identified the biological vector, the thing that happens when you become an addict. That's not true for other diseases. Like, I can look at a tumor and know if it's cancerous or not.
Yeah.
We have insulin performance levels that identify if you're diabetic or not. We don't have biological markers like that for addiction. As a group, we can say things about them. They're more impulsive. They're higher risk takers. Their brains respond differently to cues related to drugs. That's all well and good, but you can't tell me a single person, like my wife just had the flu. She went and got swabbed for the flu, and we found out she had the flu. You can't do that for addiction.
Yeah.
So I think we need to chill out a little bit about this whole disease thing. Again, there's a guy that I really appreciate, David Sheff, who wrote Broken and Clean and all these really amazing books on addiction, who put a post on Facebook just the other day about not wanting to get into this disease argument because he feels like it's making people shamed again. I get it. The point of my book is we need nuance. Like, we need to stop thinking that we're going to end up with a black or white answer to this.
Yeah.
So I propose a model where we understand there are biological, psychological, environmental, and spiritual reasons for this. And each one of us can have a different mix of the different ones that create our unique addiction problem. In that way, I like to talk about it more as a syndrome than a disease. A syndrome is a set of symptoms that show up together, but their etiology, their development could be totally different. So when you look across these four vectors, people have different levels of severity in each one. And here's the crazy thing that a lot of people have a hard thing dealing with is they don't stay the same. Your biological markers change based on stress levels in the environment and nutrition and aging and all these other things. Your environmental influences change. Psychological wellness change and adapt. So not only are there these four conditions that you move around in, they change all the time. So this idea that addiction is a static thing where you're either an addict or not an addict, we need to get rid of that.
That's number completely.
One. The second piece is, and I know you guys have the 1 year no beer, and I fully support abstinence, but I think we need to take abstinence off the table as a requirement for getting help. And thirdly, for the people who follow me and the people who go to Ignited Recovery and do the coursework, what I know works for them is getting deep in and owning what I call their machine, who they are, what got them here, understanding how they got here, reducing shame and accepting that, and then building a life and a map for what they want the rest of their life to look like, completely fucking ignoring substances, by the way.
Yeah.
I talk, it's funny, I do a weekly chat I'm going to do here in an hour for all my Ignited Recovery members. We barely ever talk about drugs or alcohol. It barely comes up. And yet, porn addiction, gambling, food, drugs, and alcohol addicts all come on the chat. And they start understanding themselves. They understand their machine in a way that removes the shame, allows them to accept who they are, start learning some tools to be able to change the things they don't want, and move forward, right? Like, to me, it's the most obvious thing. It's the most obvious way to go about it. And yet I know it's a toolkit. It's one of those things that helps a lot of people, but it's far from the only one. And we need a whole set of them so that people can pick like a menu and go, oh, 1 year no beer, that sounds like something I'm down to try. Let's try that. Or Ignited Recovery, that's something I want to try. Or Smart Recovery, or AA, whatever they want to try. Give them an option, and then us be humble enough to say, oh, if my thing worked only 30% for you, here's some other tools that you should try out.
Yeah, exactly. And that is so key. It's about options, isn't it? And I remember even, 5-6 years ago when I started along this path, it felt like there was no options. For me at that time, looking around, I was like, there is the one option, again, that was very much stigmatized, and that was it. There was no role models. There was no, there was nothing. There was no community for me that I identified with. Hence, that was the reason for us creating the One Year No Beer movement, because
Absolutely.
we couldn't find anything for ourselves. So we said, let's just create this thing for ourselves. And now we're getting more of these things start to spring up. And, I've spent a lot of time looking at the science, and people like Alan Marlett and Stanton Peele. I'm sure you're familiar with those guys.
Absolutely. I love, Alan's gone now, but Stanton is an incredible force in this field.
Exactly. And these are the guys that inspire me. And then you're looking at this thing and going, right, we can do this differently. We want to give people options. So again, remove the stigma, give people options, whether it's, the wonderful work that you're doing, or it's One Year No Beer, or is it AA? But as long as they've got a lot more options than they've currently got, that gives them the chance to experiment with different things and see what works and see what doesn't work. I think that is absolutely key to this whole field, and something I just want to circle back on because it's really interesting. In terms of abstinence, so we do these challenges. The whole idea is you take a break, you do 28 days, 90 days, or 365 days to reset a little bit, and then, it's not about giving up forever. We say this a lot. For some people decide to, it was 4 years ago since I had a drink, it just doesn't do anything for me. And what we're trying to do, like you, is align people with their values, their best version of themselves, talk less about alcohol and actually about building this really vibrant lifestyle. And when they do, the thoughts of going back to hangovers, lethargy, and regret is just not an option. And that's what we talk about a lot. So in terms of abstinence, how do you get around that as such? Do you encourage your people not to take a full break or taper it off? How does it work?
So I'm agnostic in terms of whether you take a break or not. I'll say that about 40 to 50% of people who engage with me, even if they come for moderation, decide they want to abstain. So it's a really common outcome.
Yeah.
And I'm in full support, right? I tell people all the time this, and this is kind of one of my catchphrases for my clients. If the only thing I give you when you're done working with me is the life you have right now without drugs or alcohol, I have failed you miserably. You should leave me and go find something better, because that's not why they're really coming. That's like the symptom. I had this analogy that I used with somebody. They were literally asking me this question about their weed use and how much and what times, and is it okay to smoke at this point in the day or not at this other point in the day? And I said, look, the question you're asking me a little bit is like this. You're asking me, where should I put the Band-Aid and how big should the Band-Aid be? And the whole time you've got a knife in your hand and you're playing that stabbing game.
Yeah.
The one where you're like trying to stab in between your fingers. And I go, and then when you cut yourself, you're like, where should I put the Band-Aid now? Should I use this Band-Aid or that Band-Aid? Should I, it's like, should I vape or should I smoke from a bong? Or should it be a joint? Should I take one hit? And I go, eventually you come to me and you say, well, how far should I wrap the gauze? Like, should I wrap it around 4 times, or should I wrap my whole hand, or one finger at a time? But the whole time, you're still playing this game with your hand. I don't care what Band-Aid you put on, what gauze you put on it. If you don't stop playing this fucking game and you don't slow it down, you're going to keep stabbing yourself.
Yeah.
So we can talk about what Band-Aid to put on and what gauze you want on your hand, but we need to talk about the knife in your hand. We need to talk about this thing that you keep stabbing yourself with. What is it and why is it happening? Inevitably, from the people who come to me to use the Sinclair method, because I've helped people with that, to people who come to me with weed, heroin, porn, a lot of them come in saying something like, look, I don't know if I'm an addict, but I don't have the kind of relationship with my wife that I want, and, so I get what I want from porn, and I've been doing that for, our whole marriage and even before the marriage, but I got caught, and my wife is really mad at it, and I don't really want to stop the porn, but I don't really know what to do. And I said, I have a question. I totally get that you don't know if you're an addict, and I don't really care about the word. Like, why are you saying you got caught with the porn? Like, what is it that makes you caught? If you're caught with something, that means you're not letting other people in on it. It's not out in the open. What is it that's making you hide it? And I want to immediately make them go to this place where they go, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought about that, right? Like, it's that stuff that people are coming to us with help with.
Yeah.
Nobody is reading 1 Year No Beer or coming to you guys because they've been drinking since they were 17 with their buddies at the pub. Everything's going well. Life is good. They just want to see what it would be like to take a 30-day break. That you've never had one of those people, I promise. They come because something got fucked up. So, what is it that got messed up? And pay attention to that. Don't try to run away from the thing and put the alcohol in as the excuse. The alcohol is a tool too. The alcohol is making it better for you to deal with whatever it is. So respect that. Respect it as a tool. If you think you can give it up before starting to do the work, all the more power to you. You won't be drunk when you're looking at the stuff. It'll land better. You'll remember things better because you tend to forget stuff when you get too drunk, and you'll function better. But if you're not ready for that, okay, try to drink less. By the way, almost everybody drinks less when they start treatment, even though almost nobody stops completely drinking. So drink a little less, smoke a little less weed, do this work, see if it lands, and then use the gradual improvement. I've seen people come to abstinence through gradual improvement. I've seen people completely cut off. I've seen people go up and down and go to abstinence. And I've seen all those end up with people in moderation. So just like with the Pygmalion effect, part of my job is to not expect that because I've had my experience, I know what your experience is going to be like. I want to leave that open and give you the tools that I have and let you build your own vessel, your own experience that supports where you want to go.
Yeah, that's it's genius. And that's where we are with all of this. And it's encouraging people that actually this is much bigger than the alcohol thing. That is just the platform. Removing that or moderating it or getting on top of the alcohol actually is the key to all this other good stuff. Now that's what we found, whether it's your diet, your exercise, the energy. And then when people get that, they start to realign with those core values again, as I mentioned, or that meaning and their purpose in life. And you see them, they just go and you just get these wonderful transformations. And it's nothing to do with the alcohol. It's about them finding who they are again. It's finding their authentic self and reconnecting with that. And when it happens, there's no willpower required. That's what we always say, because they don't care. The alcohol is just an inanimate substance again. It adds no value to their life because they're on doing bigger and brighter and better things. And it's just wonderful when it happens.
Oh, isn't that the best when you get one of those emails from somebody who got exposed to your stuff? I got one this morning and he said, in the 2 months since I've started watching your things and enrolled in the course, you have literally changed my life.
Yeah.
And that's the reason. That's it. That's the reason I do this. I mean, that's the reason why it's like this is the third podcast I've done today.
Oh, you're doing well.
And after this, I'm going to go do the live chat with my people. And last night, my wife was mad at me. Sorry, honey, because, I had to work after we watched our TV show. Like, there are so many people struggling, just like we did.
Yeah.
Out there, stuck, feeling like the only thing everybody tells me to do is go to AA, go to AA, go to AA. I fucking hate AA. I don't want to go to AA. And nobody is offering other solutions. And this is our talk. Do you know Annie Grace?
Yeah, Annie's great, yeah.
Okay, so I was just chatting with her on Facebook. The reason I do these things is I think those of us who are offering alternative solutions need to all band together and shout from the mountaintop and say there are other options, because nobody is paying attention because they don't know. So every once in a while somebody finds it and it's like a mind-altering experience for them. But it's our job as the helpers to get out there and let people know there's another way. You can get help. You can do the 30, 90, 365 thing. You can do Annie's Naked Mind. Like, you can do Ignited Recovery. You can do whatever it is that speaks to you. And here we are as a community because we believe that we're not the only ones. There are other people that do really good stuff. And we'll connect you with them. We're not going to try to tell you, just go to more meetings, do more of my stuff, and it'll help you, even if the first one didn't help you. I'll connect you to the resources. I will help you find the next piece of the puzzle that I know is doing good work, that I know is changing lives, because I can near guarantee this to people. Once they find this area of life, I can nearly guarantee that they will beat their problem.
I love it.
You will find something that fucking fixes this.
Brilliant. I absolutely love it. I think that's a brilliant way to actually wrap up and let you get on, because I'm inspired just listening to that, and it's so true. And we do this with Annie. It's the same thing. It's just letting people know there's other options. And again, it's not just about the substance. It's about so much more than that. It's about finding your authentic self, building this vibrant lifestyle, and you are off to the races then. This is about building the best version of you, and that is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
So just before you go, let us know where we can find out more about you or the clinics and what you do online.
Sure, thank you. So ignited.com, which I spell IGNTD.com. We just lost some vowels. IGNTD.com is the easiest first website. And if you specifically want to go look at the course, and I have a free 1-hour webinar that explains what's special about my method, it's IGNTDrecovery.com. So ignitedrecovery.com. And if you got questions, info@ignited.com. You can find me on that website, on ignited.com itself, and ask questions. I, like you, am in this to create change. So if anybody's struggling with anything, reach out. If I'm not the right fit, I will help refer you to somebody who is. I want less and less people suffering with this.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think this is the start of something beautiful.
Absolutely, man.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for being a guest. You've been an absolute star, and I think many of our members are going to love this episode.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks so much for having me on.
Have a good one.
You too.
Powerful stuff. I mean, you can just feel and hear the inspiration in Addy's voice. You know, he's completely aligned with this thing. He's completely impassioned. His mission, not dissimilar to ours, is to help 1 million people with their issues around addiction. That is his mission. That's what gets him out of bed. He's a workaholic. This guy is all over it. And I think we can all learn so much from what he's doing. And as we discussed briefly in the podcast, it looks like we'll do a lot more work with Addy over the coming months and years, because I think what we're doing and what Addy's doing, as mentioned, Annie and these people are actually really changing the landscape of how we view behavioural change and how we view addiction. And I think that is super important. Again, exciting times ahead. And don't forget, check out his TEDx talk. I think it's really cool. I loved it.
Catch you all next week. And thanks for tuning in to the 1 Year No Beer podcast. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the 1 Year No Beer podcast. For a full list of episodes and to join in the challenge yourself, head on over to oneyearnobeer.com. oneyearnobeer.com.